Hi, guys. I'm Graham Marshman here with my co host, Louie Pasculli, and we have a very exciting episode of PTV FC for you guys today. But before we start getting into any of the soccer, Louie, how are we doing today?
I'm doing okay, Graham. Happy to be on another episode of PTV here. Second episode of season number 3. Allergies are kind of kicking my butt, so if you see me reach over and grab a tissue or a paper towel, that's why. But we thug it out, and we're here talking about footy, so I'm ready to go.
Now, I completely understand that allergy season is upon us, and also so is soccer season. We're right in the heat of the Premier League. We've played 8 games so far, and so far, Tottenham sits at the top of the table, tied with Arsenal at 20 points. How surprising do you think this Spurs team has been, and what have been their keys to winning these games?
Well, maybe it's the Harry Kane curse. The curse might not be on Tottenham, but actually Harry Kane himself, he'll knows that if Bayern doesn't do as well as they plan to in the Bundesliga after winning it 11 years in a row, then we could see it might be surrounding Harry Kane instead of the Tottenham Hotspurs. But nonetheless, it's hard to replace a world-class striker like Harry Kane. They've asked Heung-min Song to play up top, play the number 9 role, and he's been doing a fairly good job so far. He's right, I'd say in his prime, maybe a little bit past it, but nonetheless, he's still a really good player. Has 6 goals through 8 games. But as to your point about it being surprising, it is a little surprising because not only did Tottenham, I'm talking about, have to replace Harry Kane, but they also got quite a few new members in that back line. I think 3 of the 4 are new. They also have a brand new goalkeeper. So it's and also James Madison, who's been producing in the midfield as a cam, has been doing well. He has, I believe, the number is 5 assists in 8 games this season. So it's tough to have so many new players. Being a Chelsea fan, you know how this is. It's hard to have a lot of new players come in, have chemistry immediately, and then produce results right off the bat. But it seems like Tottenham has done a good job of that, of mixing in these players, and they've really been able to, find their ceiling, having that ceiling be right at the top of the Premier League. They just beat Arsenal, who we know is a really good team, and things are looking up for them so far.
Yeah, I mean, definitely what you said about Human Song. Shout out to him for my fantasy team. He has been getting me
He's been
wins
great for
when I
that.
probably shouldn't be winning games. But, he has been honestly an amazing player. I think, last season people were wondering how it was going to be without Harry Kane for Human Song because he did struggle a little bit last season. But he's coming to this season to that new role. They're asking a lot from him. And I think, he has proven before he is the guy for the job. Maybe not as much as last season, where he wasn't banging the goals that everyone thought he would, but he was a tie Gold Boot winner with Mo Salah not too long ago. So, I definitely think that he is one of the people who, is definitely pivotal in winning these games. And so is James Madison. I mean, at first I thought James Madison was kind of like a band-aid over a larger wound in the whole scheme of Tottenham and their recent losses and everything and how they haven't been performing as well and not making European competition and everything. So I thought maybe that was like a band-aid over a much larger wound. And he honestly has completely proven me wrong because he seems to have really stepped into this Tottenham role and really proven that, everyone thought he could be a top tier player for a top tier club at Leicester City, but he's definitely proving that he is one of those players. And it's not just like talk now. Now he's actually going out there and he's providing assist for Human Son up top. And this Arsenal team just really, or Tottenham team just seems to really be clicking. And I think their manager has a lot to do with that. He did step in at the start of the season after Antonio Conte left last season. So I definitely think that this Tottenham team is a very big surprise for everyone. And I definitely think that they make the title race more interesting in the end. It's not Arsenal and Man City like everyone thought it was going to be. Tottenham threw in a nice curveball, and I really appreciate something like that. And talking about that, we're going to talk about Arsenal as well, getting a 1-0 win over Man City in their last game. Big win for Arsenal. They looked a little bit shakier than they did last season coming into the season, but it seems like they've started to really pick up form a little bit. They go into Chelsea on Saturday. We'll be watching that game in Orlando, Louis. Me and Ryan Johnston will be together watching that game. Maybe we should record a little bit, see, we can get some nice reactions from that game. Hopefully it's entertaining and not like a 0-0 draw, because that would be, no one would want to see something like that. But, what do you think What do you think keeps going with this Arsenal team?
I think the biggest thing is that this Arsenal team is building off last year. A lot of these guys, so unlike Tottenham, a lot of these guys were here last year for that run that they had, and then they let it slip through their fingers right towards the end. Manchester City ended up being the title bearers. But in this case, the Arsenal team is out for revenge, it seems like. I mean, a win against Manchester City is huge, regardless of how City is playing, regardless of how Arsenal is playing. But they were able to go out and get that win, like you said, and perhaps maybe we will have a little bit of recording to do over this little trip that will be going on, because I was thinking the same thing actually before we hopped on this podcast. But nonetheless, like I said, this Arsenal team, they just seem hungry. They seem like they really want it. Because last year it was a little bit of bursting onto the scene. I mean, we knew Arsenal was going to be good, but I don't think anyone predicted them to be that good. And now they look to be very cohesive, and just playing very well at the moment. And so we'll see again if that continues, or if it's something like last year where it might falter off towards the end of the season. But yeah, they're looking really good. I'm sure Ryan Johnson is very happy right now with watching them play over these last few games and the good form that they've been in.
Now we're also we didn't put this in the rundown, so I'm sorry. I'm gonna hit you with a sideline here. I don't know if you prepared for this very well, but we have been talking about these recent. There's been a lot of discussion about the recent VAR and how VAR is discussed and how the referee's language is very odd and misplaced. It seems like. Sorry, someone's vacuuming in the hallway. I don't know why, but these hallways are dirty enough. But there's like these really weird calls, like the offsides against Liverpool, which they're already 2 men down at that point when that offside goal happened, asking for a replay of the game when that goal happened very early on. It wasn't a 90th minute game winning goal that got taken away and should have been given. It's absolutely ridiculous that Jurgen Klopp is even discussing it. It happens to every team, but just because it happens to Liverpool, all of a sudden it's a problem. But you look at these recent VAR decisions, like Mateo Kovacic probably should have been sent off earlier in that game. He should have gotten at least a second yellow, let alone a red card in the first tackle he put in, and the VAR decided against it when there were tackles that weren't even close to being as egregious, like the one with Malagusto. So you look at these things, and what do you think? Like, what do you think people want from VAR at this point? Because all I want is a little bit more consistency with how things are called in each and every game. If you're going to call something in the first minute, you got to call it in the 90th the same way you called it in the first minute.
Yeah, I actually was going to touch on consistency as well. I know I don't mean to cross-reference sports, I feel like I do it a lot here, but it's kind of like defensive pass interference in the NFL. Sometimes it's called, sometimes it's not. Same thing with holding. Sometimes it's called, sometimes it's not. So as long as the referees are consistent, and they use VAR to help, to help aid them, then that's really the biggest thing, making sure the calls are consistent, not only from the beginning to the end of the game, but also for all of the teams. Like you said, it hadn't happened to Liverpool. Now it did. Kind of interesting that now it seems to be a big problem in the Premier League. So keep that in mind as well. But yeah, no, definitely consistency like you talked about. And also, I feel like I know we have VAR to help with very close decisions, but I kind of liked a little bit of the human aspect, because I feel like the linesmen are relatively correct in calling off sides. Like, yes, there are some that are obvious that they get wrong, and that's what VAR will help for. But it's so sad to see those that are just a hair, and that then get called either offsides or not offsides, and it reverses the call that was originally on the pitch when the play happened. So I know, again, that's what it's used for, but some of those really, really close ones probably should just stay, because that's what everyone saw on the pitch and that's what they went with originally. How do you feel about that side of VAR?
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing is, these players, that call was against Luis Diaz. These players are so fast. They're so quick. And these balls are being played, and it's going to be hard for the referee to keep an eye on when that ball is touched. He needs to know when the ball is touched and where the player is while the ball is being touched. So it's very hard to make that quick decision. It happened. I played club and high school soccer. In an entire career, there were offside calls that weren't offside, but it's just so hard to check, especially being a linesman. It's very, very hard. If you want a good video to go watch, is look up Jamie Carragher and Gary Neville. They go do I think Roy Keane is in it too. They go and they be linesmen and officiates for the games, for Sunday league games, and they talk about how hard it is. We criticize. It's harder, I think, for the linesmen, but the VAR guys are there to assist them. They are a virtual assistant referee. They are there to assist the linesman. Human eye has a human error. VAR does not have human error. They can stop exactly where the ball was touched, go exactly to where the thing is, draw the lines, and you see that he was offside or he wasn't offside. I think that's what it's there for. And honestly, I think maybe that they need to do some, like, I remember with the World Cup, there was technology in the ball to where it like kind of like goal line technology where it vibrated on the referee's watch whether or not it was offside because there were cameras in the ball and there were motion detectors in the ball so that it knew immediately if it was offside or not. So I think, VAR will get much more complicated, much more complex, and I think that will happen eventually for all leagues across the board. But I think that that's a little bit into the future. And right now we have, I think, something that could work if it was just consistent. And you can't blame the people on the pitch for it because they're not there. Now, should VAR do better at helping those people? Yes. But you can't just blame the people on the pitch outright. The game's fast, especially nowadays. These people are running extremely fast. And, I don't think I can fully blame the people on the pitch for these mistakes.
Now, what about those calls that I was talking about that are really, really close, like not really fouls necessarily, because I feel like those are relatively clear, but the ones that are offside by just like a hair? How do you feel about that? For example, if it was called onside on the pitch and then they go to VAR and then it's called offsides.
Yeah, so
in that case, it would be inconsistent because there would be evidence saying that it is offsides, but
that's what I mean. Like, they change it all the time because, like the one Chelsea game, Lukaku was called offside because his elbow was offside. But then they changed the rule where it needs to be the shoulder. So that, the rules get really messed up and it's a split hair decision. And yes, I think it's ruined goal celebrations. I feel like every time the player scores on a through ball, do you see them? They're like,
they're looking at the linesman.
They're looking at the linesman. They're like, I scored, then I scored. Then the board comes up and it's like being checked for possible offside. And they're like, oh, I hope I'm not offside. And then it's like goal confirmed. And they're like, hey, but like, it does take away a little bit of the passion and the excitement, I feel like. But, too many things have happened in the past to where they're not just going to get rid of it now. And, maybe they do a test in the lowest league, where they have VAR and see how many, do like 5 or 6 games without it and see how it does. But, that's something that I don't think is likely to happen. We have it. It can work. It just needs to be really looked at and, hammered down the rule set and hammered down the language to make it more consistent. But moving on from that, a team that we had just talked about who was afforded a little bit or who benefited a little bit from VAR, Manchester City. Manchester City has lost 3 of their last 4 games with 2 consecutive Premier League losses, one to Wolves and one to Arsenal. Now, what is going on with Manchester City? Is this the team that has won how many Premier Leagues now? 5 Premier Leagues and won the treble last year? What's going on with this Manchester City team? Because if I think anything, they've improved.
Yeah, I mean, this definitely is the team that had all the success in the prior and previous seasons, but there's one key player that's missing. It's Kevin De Bruyne. He has not been in for quite a while now, and you can just tell that the entire offense is not the same without KDB. Haaland aside, his assist and his passing ability is just uncanny, and we've talked about how good he is on this podcast previously, and I think that the entire offense just falters when he's not playing. Last game, they had Bernardo Silva in, and he's not really a central midfielder. He's more of a wing player. I mean, he did okay, but it's tough to replace a guy like that, and then especially when you move a player who's usually been playing on the wing for City into the middle. It's tough to get the chemistry and also to have the same production that Kevin De Bruyne have. We're going to talk about Haaland in a little bit, but it also hinders him as well because some of those passes from KDB were just outstanding. And they would just put it right on a platter for Haaland into the box, and he would be able to just slot it home. That not being there certainly is a hindrance. I also think, though, it could just be a run of form that they're like a bad run of form that they're having. They've played some decent teams, both in Newcastle and the non-league competition, as well as the other, not Wolves, Arsenal, the team that we were talking about earlier. So like those two are 2 very good teams. So it could just be that they're having a rough stretch of form. But yeah, no, they definitely don't look the same as they did last year, not firing on all cylinders. And I think a big part of that is KDB.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're completely right. Kevin De Bruyne is world class. I mean, he has been, he always will be, up until the day he retires. The way he passes the ball is just something we've never seen in the history of football. And you look at missing him and, you kind of begin to think a little bit like, is is it Pep Guardiola the reason this team gets so much success, or is it Kevin De Bruyne who can operate Pep Guardiola's system so efficiently? And he's kind of the one who kind of completes that, tiki-taka style of football. Does he complete that final ball into the final third to a Haaland, to a Bernardo Silva, to a Jack Grealish, to a Phil Foden? Does he make that final ball work? Is he like the I see like the Robin to Pep Guardiola's Batman. You know what I mean? He completes him. Is he the missing piece? Without it, it seems like they're missing something. It seems like something's off. They have tons of creative players. Like you said, Bernardo Silva is one of the most creative players in the game, and he's playing in the center of it. But he can't do the same thing that KDB does. So that the system doesn't work as much, and they're winning one game out of 4 games, which is, not something we should be seeing, especially from a team as deep as theirs. So, you wonder if the lack of and you look at the games that they've lost, like big games that they lost in recent history. They lost the Champions League final to Chelsea, and KDB went out of that game fairly early. And that Manchester City team did not look as creative as they did before. Also, getting rid of someone like Riyad Mahrez, who they would bring off the bench to bring more creativity on the right wing. So, you think maybe that this Manchester City team is kind of starting to, look a little thin in the midfield, not defensively, but offensively. If they're relying on KDB a little too much to have so much production for them, which is what I'm starting to wonder is if they need to bring in someone that they can mold into, study under KDB's tutelage, find a similar profile player to try to keep this Manchester City reign going forward. But moving on from Reign, we're trying to talk about one of the kings of football now, who has been under fire from the media as of late with 8 goals in 8 games. It's kind of odd to say, but, Erling Haaland, prolific last season, broke so many records, one of the best scorers. He proved he's one of the best scorers among the top levels, has been under fire recently for a lack of form and a lack of performance going into this season. Why do you think that is, Louie? Why do you think with 8 goals in 8 games is someone like Erling Haaland, who is averaging a goal a game in the Premier League, still under fire for a lack of form?
Well, I think there's a few reasons here. I think one, the English media loves to nitpick at like small things that they turn into big stories. Actually, I was reading a book about Wayne Rooney, and it was like basically his rise to fame. And he said that he never really cared for the media before, but he said how just how annoying it was whenever he would do something small and then the media would blow it out of proportion. And like I kind of see that now, because after reading that, I started paying a little bit more attention, and I kind of now see what you mean. Not you, but what Wayne Rooney means, and I understand like this question because of how the media is kind of doing this now to Erling Haaland, and because of that, it's kind of unfortunate. I mean, like you said, the guy has 8 goals in 8 games. That's like unheard of numbers. But I guess we're just used to last year where he broke the record for most goals scored in the Premier League. And then the media is like, what's wrong with Haaland? It's like, well, nothing is wrong with Haaland. He's missing the greatest player in the world. And he's having a fantastic year just like in and of itself. Like there's nothing really wrong with Erling Haaland. It's more of just like the media is just kind of like, let's build a story that doesn't really exist. Now, sure, you can argue that Man City is not playing as well. That's fine. But I mean, 8 goals in 8 games, like there's really nothing to talk about there in terms of performance or skill. He still has it. It's not like he fell off from last year. Watching him play, looks like the same exact player, just minus Kevin De Bruyne. He will be fine. I think this is a little bit blown out of proportion. I mean, sure, if there actually is a goal dip, then yeah, that would make sense for the media to be like, well, perhaps he's regressing, perhaps this is wrong or this is wrong. But as of right now, I mean, yes, there is a goal dip because he's not in a position to break a record right now, but nonetheless, like his performance, yes, should be based on last season, but not entirely, because that was a historic season. I know we were talking on this podcast how we could repeat it, but that was if like everything goes well. That was if the team is playing really well, Kevin De Bruyne comes back, all that good stuff. But I think it's a little bit unfair to base his entire performance this season off of last season, because of like he's still having a good season.
Yes, I mean, something you didn't mention that I have seen like historically watching the media and watching Chelsea my entire life and watching these English Premier League games is that the media tends to target or favor English players and people who play for the English national team. But not just that, they also tend to favor Liverpool and Manchester United players, especially. Now,
big market.
Big
Makes
mark.
sense.
So if there's foreign players that don't get criticized as much as you think, Mo Salah plays for Liverpool. But then Marcus Rashford has a terrible season 2 years ago. Not many people are talking about Marcus Rashford being done as a player or his dip in form. But then last year he's a really good season. All of a sudden, it's the English media is blowing up over Marcus Rashford because he plays for Manchester United and he's an English national. So you look at these players who are very much scrutinized just because of their nationality, and the English media doesn't like foreign players doing well in the Premier League, as it's been proven, and they don't like people performing outside of those two clubs because the English media is heavily favored by fans of those two clubs. Manchester United and Liverpool have a very heavy potency in the media. You look at the Premier League pundits, three of them are some of the most famous players from those clubs. You got Gary Neville, who was one of the most famous right backs for Manchester United, Roy Keane, who's one of the most famous Manchester United players to ever play, and they have Jamie Carragher, who played for Liverpool his entire career and is one of their most famous players. So, you look at this predominantly predominantly red media of Liverpool and Manchester United, and the hate that they have toward these foreign players who aren't English in the Premier League, and the fact that they have this hate toward teams that aren't Manchester United or Liverpool. And I think that they shouldn't be slandering Erling Haaland. He's still the best striker in the Premier League, without a doubt. They're blowing it out of proportion because he's a Norwegian kid who plays for Manchester City. I think that's the best way to sum it up. But we're going to be moving away from England now. We're going to stop talking about the pundits, and we're going to move away from England to the Champions League. The last year we have of a good Champions League, in my opinion, but that's just my take. So we're going to talk about some of the teams that, might not be performing so well, might be performing way over expectation. And, I'm not going to go first. I'm going to let you point out a few things, but I'm just going to say Borussia Dortmund is last in their group.
I know.
Is there any other things or, anything you want to expand on when it comes to the Champions League right now, what you're interested in?
Yeah, I'll talk about Group F. I feel like that was a pretty good segue, unfortunately. So Group F really is the group of death this year. There are talks that it could be like one of the best groups ever because of how good all the teams are. So Dortmund finished second in the Bundesliga last year. Newcastle finished fourth last year in the Premier League. PSG won the title last year for Ligue 1, and then AC Milan finished fourth last year in Serie A. Currently our first this year. So it's a crazy group. Normally I feel pretty confident with how Dortmund is going to do in the group stage. This year not so much. Usually the round of 16 or the round of 8 is where Dortmund will fall out of the Champions League, but I don't even know if Dortmund is going to be able to get out of the group stage because of
Chelsea last year.
What'd you say?
Like Chelsea last year when you fell out of the Champions League.
Like Chelsea last year. Yeah. So
watch that video.
Yeah, so that could very well be Dortmund this year, which I would love if Dortmund could compete for Europe, or in Europe, but this year I don't think so, just because of how hard the group is. Currently, they like you said, they are last. They are with 1 point only. The next highest team is AC Milan with 2 points, and then it goes PSG, and then Newcastle is top of the table right now in terms of that group. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, but I'm a little pessimistic about Dortmund's chances going forward.
Yeah, and I'm going to point out some things. First, that group. I'm going to look at that group first since we're already on it. Newcastle United being top of the group is something that it should be truly inspiring to people that believe that the Premier League is to become a farmers league with only the big six on top. And it does, help my point earlier that I had made in the first episode about is the Premier League becoming a big seven with the introduction of the money to Newcastle. That is a historically amazing club. St. James Park is one of the most historic grounds in all of English football. And I think it is amazing for them to have these Champions League nights and not only have them, be beating teams like PSG at these places. That's, I think, is something that is truly historic, that this is starting to happen again. And I think every Newcastle fan is probably over the world over this. I'm not personally one, but I know I would be if I had been, kind of a poverty club with tons of history, but of recent lost a lot of recent success. But now that they're starting to get back their success, I think it's a really inspiring thing. And I think PSG, Kylian Mbappe should leave. I don't think he's good for the club. I don't think the club's good for him. And I think he should part ways and go to Real Madrid already. But looking at that, AC Milan Borussia Dortmund being third place in fourth place in a Champions League group really does speak volumes of how good this group is. Borussia Dortmund is a very good team. They will perform very well in the Bundesliga, as everyone knows. But, I think it speaks volumes to how hard Group F would be and why they call it the Group of Death. But now I'm going to look at Group A, which I think Group A and B, I'm going to look at both of them because they're the two most interesting standing-wise, I feel like. Bayern Munich first in Group A. Second in Group A is Galatasaray. Third in Group A is Copenhagen, and fourth sits Manchester United at the bottom of the group after losing to both the Bayern Munich and Galatasaray. They sit at the bottom with 0 points. What's going on with Manchester United? I mean, Galatasaray did sign some really good talents like Zaha and Icardi over the summer, and they also signed Hakim Ziyech. I forgot about that. We put him on loan there, but obviously losing to Bayern Munich is kind of understandable. Bayern Munich's a very good team. They have Harry Kane now. They're working very well. But losing to someone like Galatasaray in the Champions League for Manchester United is something that shouldn't be happening. What's going on with them in the Champions League?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they're doing okay in the Premier League, but when it comes to Champions League play, they just haven't found their stride. The group isn't too challenging. Like I know, like you mentioned with the additions for Galatasaray, that were definitely beneficial. It's proven to be beneficial, being that they have a win and a draw. But Manchester United has just not been able to really get it done. And hello, roommate, how are you? Manchester United has really not been able to get it done, and so because of that. It just is unfortunate for all of those that support the red team in Manchester. We'll see if they can turn things around, but I don't know. What do you think has been going on?
I think, Manchester United sits at 11th in the Premier League, bottom half of the table, 1 point above Chelsea, who really struggled. But, it's their back line is awful. I think that's the only thing I can really put it on. Their back line is truly awful. Rafael Varane is out. Lisandro Martinez is out every other game. They just can't find healthy players to play on that back line. They've exited out Jordan. They banished Jordan Sancho to the shadow realm. Ten Hag, I think, is a problematic manager when it comes to managing his players. Pochettino did a great thing. I'm going to use this example. Pochettino, Chelsea caught Noni Madueke. He was injured, and instead of rehabilitating one night, he left and went and partied. He then, when he was healthy, Pochettino decided to leave him out of the game. But he did tell Noni Madueke he could earn his spot back in training, obviously. What a good manager does, and kind of still that discipline and teach these, they're Chelsea's very young kids that, it's not okay to do something like that. It's not okay to skip out on your rehabilitation and go club in London. You got to be here. You got to be focused on your football. And I feel like when similar things happened at Manchester United, Ten Hag just X'd them out. No, get out. I don't want you. Same thing happened to Ronaldo. When him and Ronaldo weren't seeing eye to eye, get out. He exited him out of the team. He wouldn't play him. And the same thing happened to Jordan Sancho, where I feel like if you're not with him, you're completely against him, and he's not going to even give you a chance. I think it's ridiculous. And then you have statements coming out from Ten Hag, statements coming out from Jordan Sancho, and it just creates this whole fiasco that, I feel like the club is struggling from. They are under the spotlight all the time, especially with the Anthony and his girlfriend thing going on. A winger on Man United can't stay out of jail, apparently. And their back line problems and the fiascos they're having with Ten Hag and the players. I just feel like Manchester United is kind of shambles right now, and the takeover did not happen by who they wanted it to. And I've seen a lot of people tweeting that it's going to be the death of Manchester United. I hope not to see that. They are a historic club, and you never want to see that happen to anybody, but I'm afraid it's possible. They've been screaming for Glazers out for a while, but I don't think this is who they wanted running their club now. But moving on from that, we're going to look at Group B. Group B is topped by Lens. Just going to let that sit. Lens. In a group with Sevilla, PSV, and Arsenal, Lens sits at the top of the table. After beating Arsenal in the last game, Bukayo Saka went down, tough injury. We're hoping for a speedy recovery for Bukayo Saka. He's a great player, very likable character too, very nice guy. So we don't hope anything bad against that. And I don't want RJ to have some excuse if Chelsea beats Arsenal. So hopefully he's available for that game, but it doesn't look like it's going to be. So, what do you think? What's up with Lens? What's up with this group? Why isn't Arsenal topping this group like they very well should be? I feel like Sevilla's intentionally in third so they can go in the Europa League again. I've seen that a lot, but what's going on with Lens?
Yeah, Lens is balling right now. I mean, I think it could be a product of having only played 2 games, but that one against Arsenal was really, really convincing. They were able to really compete with them, and although they didn't really have the possession numbers, they had three shots on target, 10 in total, only 33% possession. But they did what they could do when they had the ball at their feet. They scored 2 goals to Arsenal's one. And I think we'll see this even out as group play continues. But as of right now, really, really great start from Lennon. You got to think that it's underwhelming from Arsenal. I mean, this is a team that wants to win the Premier League, wants to win the Champions League. This is their time to shine. And it's only 1 point. And like I said, it probably will even out. But to start off not winning, leading the group in a group that's not the most difficult. It does look a little bit bad on Arsenal, but I mean I think that they're going to be okay. But yeah, no, Lens has been very impressive so far. You know me with my small club, so I hope that this continues for that sake. But you also talked about Bukayo Saka, and it's interesting that Arsenal fans, at least from a singular online video that I watched, would rather him stay than than have Arsenal win the league. So I think that's really
Oh,
good
okay.
from
I know what you're
Arsenal
talking
fans.
about. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you've seen that video as well. Cool gesture from Arsenal fans that they are super bought into Saka, and he's gonna be a good player.
Yeah, I think he definitely deserves it. He did take a lot of heat after the World Cup, missing his penalty. There was
That
a
was
lot
so
of,
unfortunate. He did not
yeah,
deserve the heat.
him and Marcus Rashford suffered a lot of discrimination and hatred that, no player should have to go through, let alone such a young player at the time, especially taking a penalty like that against Italy. It was, or during the Euros, sorry, not World Cup, but it was something that never should have happened. But I do really like him. I'm a Chelsea fan. I really like the kid. He seems very exciting. He seems very energetic. He brings something new to the England team. Sometimes I kind of like English teams because they have a lot of Chelsea players on them. So historically, I've watched England a lot just to watch my team, some of my players play. So I do like this. I do like Bukayo Saka a lot, and I do hope he has a speedy recovery because not only does my boss at work and home like Arsenal, but Ryan Johnson likes Arsenal. So if Chelsea wins, I don't want them having any excuse like, oh, but we didn't have Bukayo Saka. And if Chelsea loses, I'm going to blame the refs. So it doesn't matter. But moving
Blame
on
VAR.
exactly, I'm going to blame VAR. It's the easiest scapegoat to go to nowadays. But, we're going to move into another thing that has been in the media a lot. And lo and behold, it's coming out of Liverpool. So no wonder it's getting so much coverage. Virgil van Dijk and Jurgen Klopp have been very adamant in talking about the schedule these players have to play and how harsh it is, especially for the higher up teams who are also playing Champions League football. And they're going to be making deeper runs into these cup plays. So their season's going to be a lot more games than, some of the lower tier teams that are going to lose out on these cups very easily and not going to be playing in European competition. So what do you think your opinion is on them making the statements about how they need to be cutting games out of the Premier League schedule to help secure the future of the players from these injuries that we are definitely seeing on a year-by-year basis, these nagging injuries reoccurring?
Yeah, no, I agree with the sentiment that there needs to be less games played. I mean, there in 1 year, these players play so many games between for in the Premier League and then in the Champions League and then also for their nation as well. So this is, I mean, I agree with the sentiment. I don't know about cutting the Premier League games. I thought that was okay, but perhaps, I mean, it's not going to happen now. But the Champions League format is just going to add so many more games, which
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
I
It's ridiculous.
I agree with you. I don't like that. I liked how it was before. Also, to go back a little bit further, even the rule about getting rid of away goals. I don't know how you feel about that, but I do not like that
No,
rule.
they shouldn't.
I
They should not have done that either.
Right? I used to love when a team would score an away goal, and even though it'd be tied,
Oh,
they'd be celebrating. That's the one I'm talking
some of
about.
my best Chelsea memories was in like that 2012 Champions League semifinal when we tied Barcelona, but we scored two away goals. Oh my God, Ramirez scored an amazing goal that game, and Fernando Torres scored in the last minute to seal it away. And it's like those things create more drama. It creates these beautiful
Absolutely.
memories, like especially since they're away goals, so you're most likely watching on television with a family member, with friends or whatever. It creates these memories, and it's a very nice thing to see. But doing away with it, I thought was stupid. I don't like the rule. I don't think it's smart. You're playing two legs for a reason, one at home, one away. Use it for something else than just playing home and away. But
Right, and
then
real quick, away goals also are harder to score than home goals. It's harder to
mhm.
score at an away ground than your own home stadium.
Yeah, and you look at this new format and you're just adding more games to it, to these players who don't want to play more games. They don't want to risk their lot, like their health. Look at players like Aiden Hazard. Aiden Hazard, imagine if he didn't have to play as many games when he was getting trucked in and out night by night by, the massive back lineman in Stoke City on a Sunday afternoon. You know what I mean? Like, his career could have been a lot longer, and we saw a very stinted career because of what happened to him through those injuries and through playing too many games in his career, you can say. But then there's the other side of it. What would I do with myself on a Sunday night, on a Sunday morning, or Saturday morning without Chelsea on? I'm like nagging myself right now. I'm like, oh my God, can Chelsea please come back? Because we're in the middle of an international break. I'm like, come on, like, sure, international friendlies are fun to watch. Christian Pulisic scored, woohoo! We got killed by Germany anyways. But I'm just like, I'm itching for it again, and it's not even been a week since a game, so. Maybe there's a little bit, and the broadcasting rights, that's going to be very hard to, cut games. Where's our money? We want money, like they're not going to just start doing that for their own, keep their pockets full, as these broadcasting companies like to do. But, it's definitely something that needs to be considered, I think, because we don't want these players, getting hurt. And like, I'm sure Marco Royce could use a game off or two nowadays.
He'll get his game off, whether there's more games or not. Just at the current state he is in his career. But what I was going to say real quick before we wrap up was that it's unfortunate that we're now talking about cutting Premier League games instead of either Champions League games or international friendlies, because I would rather see more league games, whether it's Premier League, Bundesliga, Liga 1, doesn't really matter to me at least. I would rather see more of those games than and not see those games get cut, rather than adding games to the Champions League or adding games or just to the same amount of games for National League. And I also think that this could be good because teams will have to focus on squad depth more, which is I like that idea. But it's going to lead to more injuries.
Yeah, and like, no offense, no one cares about the Nations League or like the Nations League or these international friendlies that are just taking big chunks out of the Premier League season and making these players play more condensed schedules when it comes December or January. So, it's ridiculous, I think. Like, did the United States really need to play Germany this weekend for whatever reason? Like, I get that there were European qualifiers for the teams that, aren't playing, like Germany was playing the United States because they've already qualified because it's just being hosted in Germany this year, obviously. But Norway lost. So now that the only way they can qualify is through doing well enough in the Nations League. Yeah, I get it's giving more opportunities to these countries. But then again, don't expand the Champions League format. It was perfect. It was perfect the way it was.
Perfect.
How long has the Champions League format been like this? How many years have we had this perfect format that works? But there's not enough games, not enough money to be made. So, that's just how I feel about it. But anyways, I think that's going to wrap us up for this episode of PTVFC. I'm Graham Marshman, joined by my co-host, Louie Pasculli, and we will see you next time.